Welcome to the World Cup mood board. What's it called? Yeah, we'll call it World Cup mood board. I'm Jarrod Kimber, 99.94. It would have been better if we just played the bumper first. I love the theory that Pakistan had it way too easy in the last World Cup, and that was their problem. You know, they beat India early on, they raced through their group, they had that face-saving six against Afghanistan, and then into the semi-final against the Australian team, who was still trying to work stuff out and not really on top of it at all. And everything just came to them naturally, and that's not the way that Pakistan is, of course, supposed to win. And so in the final, they had one fielder slightly out of position, and suddenly it all fell apart in a glorious, chaotic mess. But not the kind of chaotic mess that they usually have when they win. And if you look at this particular tournament, they started in a beautiful, glorious, chaotic mess. Losing a near unlosable game, and then going back to back on losing near unlosable games. When their World Cup was basically over, they batted really oddly against the Netherlands, if we're being honest, before beating South Africa to give themselves, I suppose, a theoretical chance of staying in this tournament. And then, of course, that Bangladesh game at the end. But if you look at their entire tournament, perhaps the weirdest thing that has happened to Pakistan actually happened to Baz the leader's face. And I'm going to play you this video, and we're through the looking glass here, so keep your third eye open. Oh no. Pakistan needed the Netherlands to beat South Africa to get to this stage. But let's go back before then. Baz the leader got hit in the face this tournament, and it was bad. Really bad. And yes, it was against Pakistan. The leader at this point had been batting at number 3, but he didn't do that after he was hit. Netherlands changed their order and sent Tom Cooper up to that position. And it was batting there that Cooper hit 35 runs from 19 balls to stun South Africa. But the leader still played as a lower order batter and a bowler. And against South Africa, he took the important wicket of Heinrich Klaassen. So, had Haris Rauf hit the leader any softer, there's a chance he might have stayed up the order. If he hit him any harder, he might have given him concussion, and he would not have been able to play against South Africa as a bowler. So what am I telling you? It's that Haris Rauf hit Baz the leader just hard enough to get him down the order and still bowling, and it's those two things that Netherlands used to beat South Africa and get Pakistan into the final of this tournament. We're through the looking glass here, people. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the whole thing is so random. It's almost like Pakistan's chaos is now an airborne virus that affects other teams as well. But it's as much as that, you know, we're talking about the chaos and everything. If you look at the highlights of this particular game, that's not how Pakistan played this, right? This wasn't one of those Pakistan games where everything's falling apart and, you know, there's nonsense going on and you're never quite sure. This was a really low pressure game for them. They bowled very well early on, used conditions, used the size of the ground very well as well. They got reverse. We haven't really seen much reverse at all in this tournament. They showed a lot of energy in the field. They backed that up with skill as well. And they also, I suppose, most importantly, remembered to bring their opening batters to this game, which is always a very important thing when you're so opening batting dependent. The chaos was almost external. This was a professional win by a professional team that has won a lot of T20 matches now over the last few years, and has to win one more in order to fulfill the, I suppose, the natural talent that we've seen coming through there. New Zealand was barely even a narrative arc in the soap opera that is Pakistan T20 cricket today. This was like the least entertaining win, if you're a neutral fan from a Pakistan point of view that you could possibly have. As you can see from the actual Pakistani fans, they did not care for the drama. They just wanted the win in this particular case. So Pakistan, Zindabad, I assume. Let's move on to their bowling. If there's one thing that felt like Pakistan could count on coming into this match, it was, of course, their bowling so far. The batters have disappointed. That middle order is a bit ropey, and the top order hasn't really showed up. But certainly with their bowling, they are a fantastic team. In fact, as we sit here right now, well, I sit here, you might be standing, you might be on a bus. I don't know. You could be standing on a bus, not on the top of the bus. Pakistan is the best bowling attack in this World Cup when you look at the combination of average and economy rate so far. This little dot next to them actually is UAE. They really bowled well in a couple of games as well. But you can see that Pakistan's got a pretty good average, but it's really been the economy that has kept them apart from all the other bowling lineups so far. They've got now 4 seam bowlers in, which seems like a better system than they had earlier in the tournament. Shadab Khan has taken a lot of wickets as well. Shaheen Afridi probably started a little bit slow in this tournament, but he's been fantastic in the last 2-3 games. Today he was fantastic from ball 1. Well, ball 2, actually. Ball 3, definitely. His matchup with Finn Allen looked like it was always going to be really interesting. In fact, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Pakistan's great strength is that their bowling depth. The ability to, even if you look at someone like Iftikhar and Mohammad Nawaz, there's a lot of different options that they have available to them. New Zealand have gone through the entire tournament using 5 bowlers. Now they do have some depth. They could have brought Milne in. They could have used Bracewell as well, but in the team they kind of feel like that's their 5 bowlers. But if you look at Pakistan, there's just having Shadab up the order certainly gives them, and Iftikhar I suppose certainly gives them an added layer of that, but they haven't really needed it. Today specifically, they were really good at the top. Their fast bowlers have been really great. So before this game, they only needed 7 overs out of Mohammad Nawaz. And one of those was medium pace from him as well. But I think that, the fact that he could bowl today and he took the wicket of Glenn Phillips does tell you that even as a main unit of 5 player bowlers, it's really good, as you can see from this graph. But beyond that, it might be even better again. And somehow I've missed this one. Oh, there it is. And so if you look at I think it's the economy on the left and the averages on the right for this one, and you can see that Pakistan, their economy has been really good throughout the game. New Zealand actually got slightly more runs off them in this particular game, but if you look at the average again, it wasn't that it was that they dominated in a wicket taking way or an explosive way. They just kept the pressure on New Zealand all the way through. And New Zealand really didn't have anything they could go on. Now, the other interesting thing about this is we're talking about Pakistan's bowlers, but New Zealand bowlers. Have a look at those black bars, right? This is a team who has really been good in this tournament so far when it comes to bowling. And today, their bowlers didn't step up, probably when their batters needed them to. Trent Bolt's first 2 overs went for 22. Southey's went for 17. Southey was bowling wides down the leg side. It's just not a thing that you really associate with Southey. Lockie Ferguson went for runs as well. And so Pakistan took 55 runs in the power play. We'll get onto that one a little bit later on. But their 3 main bowlers had economy rates of 8.3, 7.6, and 9.3. When you remember at one stage in this tournament, I think it was Southey bowled, was it 10 or 13 consecutive dot balls? So there's absolutely no doubt that the Pakistani bowlers got the better, well, the Pakistani seamers specifically got the better out of that particular surface. All right, and we'll just go on to Babar and Rizwan. I need to be honest, and I've probably said this a few times before, but I don't really get the whole double anchor opening the batting idea. I understand why they do it, because they're backing their bowlers and they're saying that we will get a consistent total and blah, 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 blah. It's completely fine. But considering that they do it a lot and they do get it, it is worth mentioning just how good they are. These are the all-time best opening partnerships in T20 international cricket. This is actually like before the last 2 games, I think, as well. So they're further ahead, despite the fact that they only started opening together in, was it 2021? It was really recently, anyway. It's obscene and wrong for them to already be the number 1 team. and people will say, you know, the old stat padding argument. There's a lot of batters in the world that try and stat pad. They don't end up with this many runs, especially at the top level, right? to be this consistent and doing this is something else. And it's not specifically stat padding in the Pakistani team because it does fit with how their overall team plays. So even if I don't like it and you don't like it, it's kind of working for them. There had been... Oh, is that the wrong one? Wait. Oh, okay. Sorry, Muku's put the wrong one in. Sorry, Muku. They had been horrendous in the tournament. So after 4 games, if you have a look on this graph, you can see that Namibia's down at the bottom. I think Pakistan had an average... I think that Namibia's average from their 3 games opening the batting was 7 for their opening partnership. After 4 games, Pakistan's was 8. After 6 games, they're 3rd on the list. And if you look at the overall averages as well, you'll see that they're currently... where are they all overall? They're 1st over the last 2 World Cups still. So even with the, you know, non-ideal, and you can see it when you come in here. You can certainly see the bit in this tournament where they were struggling a little bit more. There's just a lot of failures in there. So in 12 games across the tournament, they've crossed 30 with their opening partnership. Sorry, in the 12 games, they've crossed at half the time, so 6 innings, including the past 2 matches, which are really interesting, of course. And within those 12, they've also crossed 100 3 times, which is bizarre. It's just not a thing that teams should do at all. And it's easy to say that Pakistan openers were unimpressive for a while, but when you look at this as a 12-game stretch, it's like they had a slight dip in the middle, and they're absolutely fine again. Look, I think it's valid to have concerns over their scoring efficiency. Oh, there's that other graph that we forgot to put up, and then I forgot to tell Muku we got wrong. Sorry, Muku. But yeah, I think it's all well and good to go, look, they're not scoring fast enough, and this is not how T20 cricket is going. But Pakistan have decided that their bowlers will allow the opposition batters slightly subpar totals. And they think that with Babar and Rizwan, and also Shan Masood now, they're tripling down on that. They think that their batters can get them to a par total enough. So if you're scoring a par total and you're allowing slightly less than a par total, that is essentially a good way of winning. It's a different way of winning. I've always said it puts a lot more... it puts a lot of trust in the death batting of Pakistan, but more of that, it puts a lot of pressure on the bowlers to be superhuman all the time. But, you know, just to remind you, they've been superhuman in this tournament so far. So that's all working for them. Just onto the power play, really important part of this game. You know, I think maybe nothing else had defined Pakistan's struggles in this tournament as much as the failings of their opening pair. And clearly that was a little bit different today. They had a combined 142 runs coming into the game so far. Needless to say that if not only are your openers the most important, but in this case, their openers are the most important openers that any team has probably ever had. They're unlikely to have many good power plays if they kept failing there. Pakistan racked up the 55 in the first 6 overs. Babar made the most of being dropped first ball. Tough catch. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But this was certainly the biggest score that Pakistan have made in the power play this tournament. It was almost double what they managed against Zimbabwe, which was 28. Incredible to think they're the final and they did that. But you can have a look here. It's not even really that close to how they have been in any of the other games so far. So absolutely dominant from that perspective. I think Pakistan's batting would probably be better served by someone like Mohammad Harris opening with this combination, just to split the 2 openers up a little bit. But it's not the theory that they have. It's weird in this current day and age to have a number 3 that attacking without a opener of similar ilk. So it's a weird combo that they've gone for there. But although, to be fair, the Mohammad Harris thing is partly by accident. He wasn't expecting to play, was he? So maybe they haven't quite thought it through, and they don't want the other 2 to move around. Today they scored at more than 9 runs and over without losing a wicket, so they didn't need the extra power up the top. By comparison, New Zealand were 38 for 2 in their power play, and it's probably no coincidence that Pakistan's previous best effort of 42 came in what had been their other best game of the tournament before today against South Africa. like against the Netherlands, I've talked about this before. They didn't bat particularly well against the Netherlands, and they tried to go a little bit hard early on. And they still only scored 41. So it does tell you how different that game was today. That was, and it was an important thing. And the very reason I think it was an important thing is we'll get to the used pitch later, but it looked like a pitch that was going to be harder to score boundaries on later on and catch on. Your best time was going to be when that ball was brand new. Even more so as that ball looked like, both those balls looked like they got chewed up by dogs today. And so if you have already seen your opposition play, that's one of the reasons why chasing in T20 can be quite handy. They had the ability to go, well, wait a minute, the best chance to hit boundaries was going to be early on. They missed that, and then they really struggled to get boundaries later on. And so when Pakistan were putting their innings together, they specifically went harder at the top. I thought it was really, really clever cricket from them. I'm going to take it a step further, though. I'm going to look at the post-power play dip overs of 7 to 10 in that sort of middle period now of the Pakistani innings. Obviously, playing well in the power play helped, but usually what happens after that time is... sorry, everyone. Usually what happens after that time is there is a dip. So I'll show you that here. So this is the black mark is all T20 teams in the last 3 years, and the green mark is Pakistan in that same time. And you can see that we have in the first 6 overs, there's a lovely little thing of the power play, and then you have the dip. And it takes a long time for teams to start scoring at the same rate that they did in the power play. Obvious reason, the fielders go out. Also, players consolidate after good starts because they can get bigger scores. There's a bad thinking that comes from one-day cricket traditionally that is sort of pushed through there a little bit. You can see that specifically from this graph, that Pakistan is an essentially slow-scoring team, or especially slow-scoring. I'm not sure that's what this says. I think it's... Although the first couple of overs, they really are, aren't they? They're a slow-scoring power play team. Like, there's no getting around it. Their mark is under the average, and they're doing that with 2 of the best openers in the history of the game, as we've just said, as far as run scoring goes, right? So they are doing this on purpose. And if you can see, that actually continues until around the 10th over. And that's the first over where Pakistan start to score at the average level of everyone else. That is... something that is we know about the power play. We probably don't always talk about that period afterwards where even though they usually have 2 set batters, far more than other teams do, they're still not kicking on. And if you have a look today, they made a conscious effort to do that. So they made a conscious effort to attack the new ball. But what I would have expected is, having got ahead with the new ball, they might have just pulled it back a little bit and be like, if we can get to the 12th over mark without losing a wicket here, we'll absolutely win. It's not what they did. They didn't go ballistic in that 7 to 10 over mark. And some of it was, there was at least one horrendous ball from Santner and maybe one bad ball from Sodhi as well. But a lot of it was just showing positive intent, making sure that New Zealand didn't have a chance to drag them back in. And if you've watched a lot of T20 cricket, you'll be aware that it's that period in that sort of low chase. So when you're chasing anywhere from 130 through to 160, it's that period if your openers get you off to a good start, or you get off to a good start in the power play, and then you naturally slow down because that part of the game is a lull in the game. That's when you can start to build artificial pressure if you're the bowling team. Then if you get a wicket, you've got a new player coming out. We know that from the 10th over onwards, it was going to be a little bit harder for new batters to come out and score straight away. Mohammad Harris had, 11 off 11 balls at one stage? And he was certainly trying to score. So it does tell you that particular period can be tricky. And what Pakistan did is they completely took away that period so that it wasn't even a problem for them. And this is the best way of showing it. They obviously went huge in the power play, but have a look at what they're doing in overs, 7, 8, 9, and 10. There's a lot of runs there. They're so far ahead of the game that you can actually see they slow down after that. But it doesn't matter because by that stage, they completely annihilated New Zealand. And because of the way they batted in that 7 to 10 over mark, that was it. There were not many wickets going, and there was still good runs coming in. So it was brilliant batting. From that perspective by them. Let's go on to New Zealand. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about New Zealand. I didn't think their bowlers bowled particularly well. The Kane Williamson thing, I kind of feel like I've done a million times. There'll probably be 83 questions about it in the chat as well. I did find it interesting that Kane Williamson still hit a big six across the line, against the pace of the ball, if that makes sense. But let's talk about Daryl Mitchell, because, who doesn't want to talk about Daryl Mitchell? He hadn't actually been batting particularly well. I think he made up, 20 odd in one of the early games where he knocked the ball around. I think that might have been when Glenn Phillips went crazy. But he was coming back from injury as well. And he was striking at around 112 so far in this tournament. But again, he was saving his best for the World Cup semi-final. Including today, Mitchell has 3 T20 I50s, and 2 of them have been in World Cup semi-finals. That's a hell of a weird post to put on LinkedIn, but hey, he made 72 off 47 that dumped England out of the last tournament. But Charlie has put this together, and I love this. I would get this tattooed on my arm. That's how much I love this guy. 16.3% of his international T20 runs have been in World Cup semi-finals. You've absolutely got to love Daryl Mitchell from that point of view. He's just a very composed player. He should have been run out early on, but you could see that he was thinking, okay, it's going to be tough to hit across the line. He's going to play to his natural strength, which is going long. So he hit that long 6 down the ground. And he was scoring at a rate that he had to, because they were already behind where they needed to be at that point, and Kane Williamson wasn't able to. Even Kane Williamson showed some good intent at times, but he was still hovering around to run a ball, for a lot of that time. So Mitchell ended up with 53 from 35, and he was the only batter that New Zealand really had in that innings. And specifically, Shadab Khan's been really hard to play for pretty much everyone in this tournament. That pitch should have suited Shadab Khan. He's had to bowl at times with, damper balls and all sorts of things. Everything was in Shadab Khan's favour. And I thought Mitchell played very well. He hit 3 of his 4 boundaries off him. And as I said, that straight hit was brilliant. Mitchell couldn't do what he did for New Zealand last time. But again, he put them in a position to win a knockout game with his innings. You look at some of the innings that Mitchell has played over the last 2 years, and it's incredible for a late blooming player who, even when you look at him, sometimes you think he's okay. And yet, I watched him play against England in that Test series. We've seen him make some other runs in around as well, and the 2 World Cup semi-finals. And also, for those who don't remember, when he was opening the batting for New Zealand last time, and he's now in the middle order, he'd never opened in a tournament before, and they just let him do it because they thought he was the sort of person who could handle it. On top of all that, we forgot to also say that his son was there. And there was a great moment at one stage where his son obviously saw him on the TV. And he went, "That's Daddy." Come on now. All right, let's get on to the used pitches. Now, the first thing that everyone needs to know is that there is obviously no rule that says that knockout pitches have to be new. And there's a reason that the ICC don't do this. And it's because in many parts of the world, if you stage multiple games, you only have 1, maybe 2 pitches at best that actually look good on TV. Everything else is not particularly set up for the TV. They're to be used for domestic cricket and, other games that are played on the arena. For the major international games, you usually only use 1 or 2 pitches. There are some grounds that have more than that, and some grounds that can accommodate more than that in big moments. But that is the first thing that you need to know. The second is that they could play it on the other pitches, but it would upset the TV companies, and it also would give you shorter boundaries in certain situations, and there would be other things that would come on. So they prefer to use the same pitches over and over again. So when people are saying that this is a conspiracy, it's not. It's really just the ICC not being very good at these sorts of things again. And remember, literally, I made a whole movie, and not a YouTube movie, like a proper movie about conspiracies in the ICC. I'm more than happy to find them all. This is not a conspiracy. It really is a lack of attention to detail. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, because I think this is important to note. The problems of this is that this is one of the most important games of the year. And we're reusing a wicket the same way that like a junior team would midweek after the senior team has already played on it, right? And in Adelaide, we'll have a pitch that's been used twice before. These are not good pitches by design. That's what happens when those pitches get older, right? They do play up a little bit. They're not as good. for cricket. That's why a fresh pitch is always the best option. And there's a few reasons why specifically. So used pitches are usually a bit rubbish, is because batters can't hit through the line, right? And quick bowlers end up bowling more slower balls, and that makes them even harder to hit for boundaries. So what you end up is when the ball gets soft, that it's really hard for anyone to score any boundaries. So instead of promoting attacking and exciting cricket, they basically are defensive and sluggish cricket. It's not as good to watch. That was not a particularly exciting game from a neutral's perspective. There was some good bowling at times, and obviously the Pakistani top order was quite good. But watching Muhammad Harris struggle to hit the ball when we know how good he's been hitting the ball on better pitches kind of tells you that it's not ideal. And I think everyone at times probably struggled a little bit there. I don't mind bowlers being on top in T20 cricket. In fact, I prefer bowlers to be on top in any form of cricket. But I do like the idea that at the end, which is supposed to be the most exciting part of a T20 game, is when you start having a lot, fours and sixes and the chaos happens. Wickets like that quite often take away that, and the games tend to fizzle out. And that's really, it's really when you want, especially casual fans, to get excited. There's a six, there's a run out opportunity, the ball's up in the air, there's a great bit of fielding, and quite often you just see sort of limp mishits go out to the boundary. That's the bit that I really don't like. Now, there are plenty of pitches that play like that SCG pitch naturally, right? And that's just an absolute normal thing to have happen, and there's no problem with that. And traditionally, the SCG pitch has always been quite sprint friendly. But if you have a look at this Big Bash data, you'll see that over the last couple of years, that's not really been the case. And also, we had one condition here where the wicket was slightly different than what you would have wanted. But with all the weather that's been around, and El Niñas, is it El Niñas? El Nina? Whatever her name is, the weather, the climate change weather thing that's happening. With that weather that's being around, this could have easily been a very wet preparation, which would have meant that the wicket would have been probably seam friendly. And that also would have changed the game. That's a normal part of cricket, right? And if the SCG just went, we just want to make this, the curator just went, I just want to give, both sides a really good chance here. I'm going to make this pitch spin a little bit more. Again, absolutely normal, right? And if you look at the different ways that the different pitches could have helped the different teams. If it had seamed more, that probably helps the New Zealand team because they're a little bit more seam dependent than Pakistan is. If it had extra pace, that probably helps Pakistan because they have a couple of extra quick bowlers than New Zealand do. If it spun more than normally, even though New Zealand have good spinners, I think that probably would have given a slight advantage to Pakistan. They certainly would have had more spin options to use if that was the case. If it's a flat batting pitch, that would have given New Zealand a huge bump. The problem with the used wicket is that, of course, it's only going to, of course, it should suit the teams from the subcontinent more than anywhere else. But World Cups are about problem solving and adjusting. And everything I just said beforehand also could have happened, right? The problem with the used wicket is it's generally only one outcome is going to come off it. And that's what the real issue is there, that, it's only ever going to have that one outcome. Whereas anything else with a fresh pitch could have been quite exciting if, they'd made a quicker pitch than normal or a bouncier pitch than normal, or it would have spun more than normal, or whatever they would have done. And there's one other thing that I really want to mention about this, is that Pakistan and New Zealand both played a World Cup in the UAE, and Pakistan didn't make the final. And New Zealand did, right? So I think we have to temper that a little bit. I think the most important thing is that this particular pitch was the ICC didn't have a rule that said it needed to be fresh, which just seems like a huge mistake to me. Then on top of that, it just shows again, and we've talked about this a lot with the new Kookaburra bills and everything else, that the ICC don't actually care what happens on the field. Right? They don't care that this was a bit of a mushy game. And we're the people who pay for that. And I say that as hardcore cricket fans, because if you're on this channel, you're probably a hardcore cricket fan, right? You're not a casual fan, right? Casual fans, I'm sure there's another YouTube page for them. Hardcore cricket fans want the best cricket available, and they want their players to be going on a fresh pitch for a semi-final in a World Cup. The idea that we haven't had that seems absolutely stupid. And you will get people who will say, and I've heard this conspiracy already, I've already had the direct messages about it, of, oh, they're doing this so that India and Pakistan make the final, or the Asian teams make the final. Let me tell you this. In one-day cricket, we have 2 white balls. That massively favors the teams outside of Asia, right? If you had 1 ball and that old ball became a dog toy in Asia, that would definitely help the Asian teams more, especially outside of Asia, right? They changed that because the ball is rubbish and it doesn't last 50 overs. And it does help the Western teams more. There's probably no massive doubt about that. It does help them more. And yet, no one ever says that that's a conspiracy. Well, actually, that's not true. Very few people ever say that that's a conspiracy to help the Western teams. It's exactly the same here. What you're looking at is cock up, not conspiracy. And what really bothers me is that the ICC just do not care enough about cricket fans and about their own product to get a very simple thing like this right. They could have changed the tournament slightly and made sure that Adelaide and Sydney did not have to have so many games back to back, so that there was a chance of actually getting another pitch up. They could have done many different things. There's also the hybrid pitch option, which this is why we need the hybrid pitches, because we need pitches that you can play on more than once that don't deteriorate massively, and so that it's a much more attractive format of cricket if the hybrid pitches are particularly attractive, and also if we actually can agree on what a hybrid pitch is. But the point is that the ICC are not looking at these sorts of things. They're not actually making sure that the product is as good as it should be. And that's what's disappointing about this. It's not disappointing that the pitch favored Pakistan more, because there are many other kinds of pitches that could have favored Pakistan more. It's specifically annoying that the ICC does not care enough to actually make sure that we have the best, most entertaining cricket to be able to watch. That is crap. All right, let's get on to Pakistan's fielding, which was definitely noteworthy today. In fact, so noteworthy that I made a video. Muku, could you play, please? Any good time to hit the ball to the right hand of Shadab Khan and run, but perhaps early on in the semi-final is not one of them. Devon Conway has mistimed this ball, and he probably thought the lack of pace gave him a chance to make the run. In fact, I think more often than not, you would actually make this run. But this time there was a twist. Look at how much the ball sits up here. Shadab didn't have to bend, didn't bounce too high to make it awkward. It just sat up perfectly so he wouldn't lose any time and could focus on the throw. I also think that Conway thought he would make it, and he was perhaps a little bit surprised by the bounce. So you could see that he barely even fully extends and he doesn't dive. And, he was out. Beautiful. Look, I think this all, watching Shadab field remind me of a conversation I had years ago with George Dobell, where I told him that Shadab Khan was sort of proof that Pakistan cricket was more professional, and you could see it in his fielding as much as anything. He was a proper fielding athlete, but he also put himself in completely. He looked like he could field for any of the better fielding teams in the world. And that hadn't really been the case. Even someone like Shoaib Malik, who was a fine outfielder, wasn't athletic in the way that Shadab Khan was. And George was, disagreeing with me. And then as he was finishing his sentence, Shadab Khan pulled off one of the greatest saves at backward point you'll ever see. And so it was interesting to see that was the case and that things were going on. And it wasn't just the Shadab in this game. There was another moment where I think it was just as New Zealand were going to start attacking Pakistan, and there'd been a dot ball, I think, early in the over, and then the next ball, Kane Williamson tried to hit one away, got an inside edge, and Rizwan pulled off an incredibly athletic stop behind the stumps to be able to get that as well. It was a really important time to have a dot ball, and I think maybe next ball, in fact, Williamson might have hit a 4, so it could have given real impetus to the side at that stage. They had a lot of energy. I thought they fielded really well. I think they missed one run out. Conversely, New Zealand didn't have a great day, and it started with this early drop. And so, Mooka, if you can play the New Zealand drops there, please. So this particular chance, it's not easy, and it's fading away and dipping a little bit, but he's just about there, isn't he, Conway? That was Babar early on. We then had this drop later on. This one doesn't matter as much because the game is pretty much won by this point. But again, it's not something that you expect from New Zealand. Santner, you can see he's furious at that. straight into his, well, I want to say straight into his hands. I suppose it wasn't straight into his hands. Ish Sodhu dropped another catch after this as well. You know, in the field, Pakistan really pushed quite well, and I thought they did quite well. New Zealand, probably looking back at this and say, what facet of the game did we play our best? And it would be hard to say that they played their best in batting, bowling, or fielding. It doesn't leave a lot, does it? You know, shirt design maybe. All right, one last thing that I wanted to talk about this game. In fact, I think there was an early comment or question about it as well. But we've got a video that I wanted to show, which is of the first 3 balls of the game. In fact, I've only got the first 2 balls of the game, but the first 3 balls of this game. So Muku will play that video for you. But obviously, Shaheen Afridi is charging in, and he goes for the big glory ball. Oh, he was charging in, then he was rewinding. Goes for the big glory ball, gets the length wrong a little bit. You see, it's a bit of a half volley. Also gives Finn Allen a bit of width. Finn Allen just absolutely smashes that, right? This was such an important thing. And you can see this is the 3rd ball. Erasmus actually gave him out twice. He gave him out on the 2nd ball, but there was an inside edge there. And a cue celebration from them. But why I think this was so interesting is that this is probably the best time in the game to attack with the brand new ball. Everything we've seen of how the game went from that point onwards, that was the time. And you could see that Pakistan gave themselves a couple of overs, but they certainly attacked the brand new ball. If Finn Allen comes off here, and he scores 30 runs in the first 3 overs, which we know he's more than capable of doing. He's also a very good player of left-arm bowling generally. I'm pretty sure I looked that up when he smashed Mitchell Stark around earlier in the tournament. He could have completely changed the way that this game ended up, because it would have put Pakistan on the back foot, but it also would have given New Zealand a cushion. And even if he went out in the 4th over or the end of the 3rd over or something like that, it would have meant that Conway and Williamson would have been batting in a slightly different situation, and they still would have had their own disadvantages. I don't think, in some ways, Williamson was really suited to bat long on this wicket because of the kind of skills he has, but because he doesn't have that sort of power hitting ability. Would he have ever been able to catch up as the ball got softer? That ability to muscle the ball when it's soft is really hard. I just can't imagine Williamson would have had that. So having that little bit of extra momentum at the start, a little bit more pressure on Pakistan, would have meant that the game's actual shape would have been slightly different. So when we look at a game, it's really important that we generally end up looking at the things at the end that shape the end. But it's really important. The first 3 balls of this game ended up being far more important than we ever thought they were going to be, although they were really fun. 1-4, 1 LBW overturned, and then another LBW. All right, should we move on to injury watch for the England-India game? So both teams have their own injury concerns. Rohit Sharma had people very concerned yesterday. Bharat was sending some footage out of Rohit not looking particularly happy. He did eventually, after being hit, he was hit on the forearm. He did eventually come back to, don't put Bharat's Twitter handle up. Bharat doesn't get, what is this, Muku? There's enough Bharat on this channel as it is. But yeah, this is the footage. They were really upset for a little while. I love how Muku actually took that down. They were really upset for a little while, the Indian team, but he did come back out to bat later. And he's, there was some bruising. And Dinesh Karthik has also shaken off any injury concerns, and he batted well yesterday. So that'll be interesting to see who ends up in that particular team. England's are a little bit more serious. Dawid Malan is very doubtful after tweaking his groin. I talked about this yesterday. That means that over the 2 World Cups, they'll have 9 starting players be injured. I think that's right, at various times. So 9 people from the starting 11s that haven't been available to them over the 2 World Cups. Not for all the games. It's, some players have got injured during them, and obviously Jofra hasn't been available for either. And Bairstow played in the last World Cup and didn't play in this one. But it is getting to the point where, it's not particularly you couldn't ignore it last time. This tournament has been a little bit slower, and we were used to Jofra being out and the Bairstow thing, getting injured on a golf course. Have to laugh a little bit, although apparently now all players get injured on golf courses. So with this particular injury, it looks like Phil Salt might make his tournament debut as a straight replacement, though there has been talk of Chris Jordan coming in for Milan as well. Charlie said that Mark Wood looked a little bit stiff in training as well. He only bowled 12 balls. That it could just look stiff because he's a fast bowler. But at this stage, I think Milan and Wood will be given fitness tests. I would assume Wood might play unless they really think he's damaged. And I would say that Dawid Malan probably will not. That's just based on the injury of how I've seen them so far. That's the end of the written portion of this team. Of this show. I'll get to your questions in a moment. So line up a couple of questions for you, and Muku will play us some ads and some filler while I read them.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
All right, let me just see. I'm certainly not going to say this question. I like giving Muku a hard time. I do like giving Muku a hard time. He's brilliantly talented. One of the best people I've ever worked with. But, we've spent too much time together now. I think it's my favorite moment of Muku. He might cut this broadcast as I say this. My favorite moment of Muku was when he turned up wearing a towel once on one of our video chats. So we just spent too much time together at this point. Let me just have a look what else we've got here. So it's ICC arranging for. I'm hoping Manat came on late, but I've already explained this. This is not what's happening. It's not why it happened. Anyway, just seeing if there's anything else available there. Let's see what else I can find. All right. Let's start with some. Then we might have a break and I can go back. There's a few there that I missed. I feel like this microphone's pushed me all the way back. All right. Vamos says, thanks for all the fun in this World Cup. You're welcome. Also, Paul sent a really nice message about enjoying the mood board when he wakes up in the morning, whichever time zone Paul is in. Don't you think Pakistan are still finish ashore and have multiple number threes? Not sure they have multiple number threes. They have multiple anchors. What is your best Pakistan batting order from 1 to 6? Yeah, I don't think they're a complete team. I don't think there's a complete team in this World Cup. Parts of South Africa I really like. There are parts of England I really like. There are parts of Australia I really liked. And I'm going back for both World Cups here. There are parts of New Zealand I really like. But there's, India and Pakistan. So what's that? The top 6 teams, which I talked about on the show yesterday. Was it yesterday? I did it last knock video. Which, after you watch this, go and have a look at the last knock video about this sort of thing. There's 6 teams. All of them have really good strengths, but no one's perfect. There isn't, a Mumbai Indians team or a Chennai team or I'm trying to think, and Northants is probably pushing it a little bit. But I think all the teams have weaknesses, and certainly Pakistan do. When you put all your put all your eggs in the opening basket, and you're coming to a tournament where there's a lot of really talented new ball bowlers where the tournament should help them. It's not a big surprise that the Pakistani openers haven't been quite as good as they have been in other places, right? So there's plenty of risk there. Yeah, I mean, I've said this about 5 times now, but I'm not sure what my ideal batting lineup would be from 1 to 6, but I would open with Harris and Rizwan, maybe? I'm trying to think if it would be him or Babar. And I would have floating number 4, number 5s. I wouldn't really have an order after that top 3. If you lose an anchor, you would probably want to send in Shan Masood later on, and if you lose a more attacking player, then probably Iftikhar or Shadab going up the order there. So yeah, I don't really do batting orders from 1 to 6 because it's so operational from that perspective. You kind of looking at your openers and then you most likely number 3. So let's say they open with Harris and Rizwan, and Harris makes 50 off 30 and Rizwan makes 50 off 45. You don't really want Babar Azam coming out when the first wicket falls. You want Shadab coming out or or whoever else, Iftikhar, whoever you think is going to be the person who's going to take that to the next level. So that's the way that I kind of operate those sorts of things. All right. Imad says, do you think it's justified to take a risky single on the last ball of power play? I don't think it's justified to take risky singles in power play. I really don't think it's that hard to chip the ball over the field. And I'm not saying smack the ball, but I do think that if you're going to take a risk, I'd much rather you take a risk on chipping the ball over the field than taking a single. If you go back and have a look, I can't remember what year it was. There was one year where everyone was getting run out in the power play in the IPL, maybe 2 years back now. I was going crazy on Twitter. It infuriating me. Such a stupid thing to do. Why take a risk on one run? If you're going to take a risk on 4 runs or 6 runs, especially when the fielders are up. And look, there are players who are very good at it. So David Warner will say, I want to get my innings started by taking runs. But David Warner's a really good runner between wickets. A lot of the players who do this don't do it. And David Warner still gets run out a lot. I remember having a look. I think the average T20 opener gets run out once every 7 innings. And Chris Gayle, for a long period of time, was like once every 20 innings or something like that. And you look at that and you go, well, he's basically taken away one form of dismissal, and then he's playing to his strengths. Not everyone is Chris Gayle. I think people thought that Chris Gayle was lazy. I mean, Chris Gayle had chronic hamstring injuries. Every time there was a period for about 5 years, almost every time you saw him take a quick single, it looked like he'd done his hamstring or had done his hamstring. And so he was a little bit of a different kind of case. But the point stands that you can actually take away one of your dismissals by not looking at that. And I think that I'd much rather try and get into a position where you can force the matchup and have the batter facing the bowler that you would like for 4 or 5 balls, then get a quick single, put pressure on yourself, and everything else. So the only time I like the quick single in that case would be if you were trying to get the better matchup. But so often they're not for that reason at all. It's just because you've had a couple of dot balls. You're allowed to have dot balls in the power play. I've got no problem with dot balls in the power play. Just hit more 2s and 4s and 6s. Mohammed says, love your content. Thank you. I was wondering if there was another way to conceive of Pakistan cricket rather than being mercurial. After all, they've been in 7 semi-finals now. Yeah, I mean, the best way of looking at it is they're a bowling team. This will probably ruin your message, but, to go back here, I do have to take you away, don't I? I've gone beyond my skill level. This is why I need Muku, everyone. Now Muku's taking it off and I'm taking it off at the same time. They're a bowling team, and it's not that unheard of for Pakistan to be the best bowling team in the tournament or within the best 3 or 4 bowling teams within a tournament, if that's the case, right? And so these things do happen a lot. And if you're a good bowling team, you can overcome other parts of your game in that. And it keeps you in tournament play, I think, more often than not. Most of the analysis we've done on limited overs formats, and this is like deep stuff that teams like India and England have done, all the way through to people like me working in T20 teams and IPL franchises, is that the best bowling unit usually does pretty well in a tournament. The best batting teams usually can fluctuate a lot more. So if you have strong bowling and you can back that, then you definitely should. And if you look at Pakistan traditionally, and you can go from 92 World Cup all the way through to now, they generally find a way to take wickets in the middle. So if you look at that Champions Trophy in 2017, when Hassan Ali is taking wickets in the middle, that's the kind of thing that they've done very well. And if you go to what England did in their very good run, they realized they weren't a particularly good bowling team. They tried to get wickets at the top, and Jofra Archer obviously helped, and at times Chris Woke, especially in one-day cricket, was quite good at that. But when they couldn't do that, they turned to Liam Plunkett in the middle to combine with Adil Rashid to take an above average amount of wickets. They knew those two were going to go for a little bit of run sometimes, and they knew that Moeen Ali could be picked off a little bit. But between the 2 strike bowlers there, they had the ability to take wickets at a better rate. Pakistan has been doing that since 92, right? When the balls reversed, when the balls didn't reverse, with their spinners, with all these different tactics they've been able to use, even just giving their quick bowlers another spell, even if the ball's not reversing. That means that you're always under pressure against them, and that they're always in games that they might not be able to. Now, they haven't always had above average batting, but they are currently, anyway, they are batting to their strength. So it's what I said before, they're making sure that they have constant targets to be able to defend, or that they can chase down something because it's not going to be completely out of the realms of possibility because the other team won't have gotten away and scored very big against them. That's why Pakistan's always in tournaments. The mercurial stuff that's all the nonsense and fun, and Bandreddi getting hit in the face and all that sort of. It's great, but the reason that they're constantly in tournaments is their ability generally to take wickets, but quite often at a good economy rate as well. Suresh says, seems with the forecast of rain on the day of the final, on the reserve day, we might have a 7-ish over finale, or worse even, a trophy shared. Yeah, it could be. I'm not really sure how to answer that. Like, I get why you've mentioned it, but that's life. That's what happens in things, the same way that we ended up with a World Cup in the UAE, because life happened. Those sorts of things happen all the time, and just got to roll with it, I suppose. It wouldn't be ideal. I'm not sure. A lot of people would suddenly be really, really upset, but they'd be the same people who hadn't noticed how random this tournament is anyway. So I suppose those people would be more upset than I would be. I'd probably just go, yeah, it is what it is. This is the only Kane Williamson question I could find, actually. I expected a lot more, so maybe I missed a couple from other people. Well, he's got a chronic elbow injury. I think it's tendinitis in the elbow. His is in the left elbow that he holds the bat, not like mine, which is in the right elbow. And what it does is it probably doesn't allow him to use his power in the same way he has. We've seen against Ireland and that big shot today that perhaps that's coming back. But he doesn't see T20 cricket the same way. He doesn't see one-day cricket the same way that other players do. There's been a huge revolution in how one-day cricket's being played. Ken Williamson doesn't really play it that way. So he does play to a particular different way. Oh, look at Mooker. He's all over the place. So it does specifically take away the power aspect of Kane Williamson's batting there. We saw good signs against Ireland. We did see that shot today. I still think he has it in him. Whether he has the ability to sit there and whack the ball the way that he used to, I don't think we'll ever see that again unless something completely changes within his arm. He's jokingly talked about cutting it off before. Yeah, that's a joke, but, it tells you how bad it has been, I think. It's a problem all the way through for cricket, but I think in T20 specifically, it causes him a problem when he's just trying to clear his front leg and hit it. And I think the shots that we've seen before is he used to be able to flat bat the ball back over the bowler's head for 6. I don't think we've seen that shot. So even when he's doing it now, he's doing it in that more traditional sort of baseball swing out to cow corner. Or he's playing a very traditional straight shot for power. Whether he'd be able to play... I mean, no one would be able to play the Virat Kohli shot, obviously, but whether he'd be able to play a shot like Virat Kohli with his elbow, I don't think he would be able to. And so it has changed the way he's batted, for sure. Bolwan says, Shaheen is the best first over bowler in T20s. I find it a bit foolhardy on the part of Allen to take him down in the first over with cross-batted strokes. Is it better to do that from the other end? It goes back to the Brendan McCullum, Mitchell Starc thing. If Finn Allen smashes Shaheen Afridi for a couple of boundaries, and gets away with it, or let's look at what happened today. He got one that he smashed. The next one he got an inside edge. If it hadn't have hit his pad, it might have gone back through his legs for 4. So it'd be 8 runs off 2 balls. And then the third ball, if it was pitching slightly outside of leg stump, and then he gets away, what would your opinion be then? Right? And that's what you have to look at. Finn Allen is in the team to take down the opposition's, new ball bowlers. That is his job. He's arguably the best in the world at it at the moment. I mean, as far as striking bowlers from ball 1 in the power play, I don't know if there's anyone else. If you're looking for someone to score 30 off the first 3 overs, he might be the person that you now choose. He really is that good at that particular skill set. So from that perspective, that's what he's there for. He shouldn't be. It depends on what you're looking for. If he was more of a Kane Williamson or an anchor type or a Rohit Sharma, he'd probably think to himself, "I'll just get a single here and I'll do it from the other end." Right? But that's not what Finn Allen is. At the moment, and from everything I've seen in him from his strike rate, Finn Allen is a person that believes he can hit any ball for 4 or for 6. And it's harder to do it against the best bowlers in the world. He probably was buoyed by the fact he'd done it against Mitchell Starc. He hasn't had a great tournament. I think that's fair to say. If it had come off, he might have won the game then and there, and we wouldn't have even known it. We would have looked for some other reason. But if it had come off, I think it really would have changed the entire shape of this game, as I talked about in the rest of the video. So I do think that it did have a big part of it to play in that. And I do understand why he did it. But, you know, I don't... Sometimes you're analysing based on the result, which is very fair. But if it had gone the other way, and even if it just got luck, it would have taken a big chunk out of Pakistan early on. And that's probably, I would have said he was given a license to do it. And he probably thought he could. Karnasani says, well, has Mitch Santner been so effective in this tournament when Akshar Patel, another tall left-arm finger spinner, has not? They're very different bowlers. Very different bowlers. Bowl from different angles, have different skill sets. Akshar hasn't bowled enough outside of Asia yet to work out what his best method is outside of Asia. I still think he could be a very, very effective bowler, but I don't think he's quite worked it out. Santner is an expert in bowling outside of Asia. Bowls closer to the stumps, mixes his pace up. Like, look, some of those slower balls that Santner bowls, they're almost moon balls. They're almost like, you know, Craig Brathwaite or Majid Haq. There's a callback for Scottish fans there. Moon balls, like really, really slow deliveries. Completely different kind of bowler. He doesn't have the natural advantages of Akshar Patel with Akshar Patel's action. If you want to have a look, there's a video I've made. Akshar Patel's like no other left arm. They're both tall left arm finger spinners. But he's like no left arm finger spinner we've ever seen before, as far as I'm aware. I certainly couldn't find any footage of any left arm finger spinners who looked anything like Akshar Patel when you broke it down frame by frame. So he is very different. But I didn't do enough analysis of it. The other thing I would say is probably didn't play that much. He was sort of in and out the side. They weren't sure when they wanted to bowl him. These things can happen in small sample sizes. Q says, do you know how much Asians hate the two new balls? Yeah, I literally did a section on it. Are you watching it all? So for those who don't know, I'll go a little bit deeper. In the old days, we would use one ball in one-day cricket, but that's not true. We actually always use two balls because the one ball never lasted 50 overs. So the only thing that has changed is that what they did is they said, well, let's just use two new balls so that it means at the 25 over mark, the ball isn't completely chewed up. And so the ball will remain all the way through the game. What used to happen was at the 34, 35, 36 over mark, almost every game in the world, they would roll out another oldish ball to replace the old ball that was absolute dog shit. And so what happened in one-day cricket was they made a decision. I don't think it's the correct decision. I think the correct decision would have been to go to Kookaburra and say, we will partner with you. Here's a couple of $1 million. Can you give us a ball that's not dog shit? Do we need to use another color? What do we need to do here? Because the pink balls do last more than 25 overs, or 35 overs, I should say. So I am aware of it. But the reason I brought it up is because when people say, oh, there's a conspiracy to help India and Pakistan look at these pitches, but people are completely forgetting that there's another conspiracy on the other side saying, oh, look, you know, in one-day cricket, there's a conspiracy to help all the non-Asian teams. It's nonsense. The truth is the ICC is not completely in charge of the game. They don't make the best decisions to make sure that the best product happens. And so what happens is we have two shitty situations. One is the two new balls, and the other one is the nonsense with the used pitches for major matches. And it's all, you know, completely stupid and no good. Matthew says, what's England's best chance of taking down Sky? It's interesting. I haven't done, I mean, I probably won't have a chance now. If they make the final, I'll probably have a better look at him. I was really interested to see, because he's so fine leg dependent and Australian pitches are bigger and there's more bounce. I was really interested to see how his game would hold up, whether because there's more bounce and more pace, he'd get the ball over the top, or whether he'd get caught a bunch of times at deep backward square and fine leg. Clearly, that's not been the case at the moment. I think, and I'm basing this I'm very much just watching him play and a couple of highlight packages where I've rewatched it. So I haven't done any proper analysis. If he's going to play that shot, right, in that particular situation, and it might be tricky in Adelaide, but if he's going to play those shots to fine leg anyway, put the two players out there and bounce him. Don't let him get the pace and scoop them. literally make him play, test match cricket. So have someone just in front of square on the leg side, have someone at a more traditional long leg, and then have someone at fine leg, and literally say to him, okay, you want to hit the ball there? We'll see. We think you'll eventually top edge one. That's if he gets into that kind of mood. I just don't think bowling to him the current way is working, because he has the ability. I mean, the only player I've ever seen be able to time the ball that well while moving outside off stump is that period of Steve Smith, what was around 2015, 2016. I think he played a shot of Wahab Riaz that was going to miss the pitch, where he flicked it on the leg side. Like, he's moving so far and still timing the ball, so it causes massive problems. Quite often, and I don't think this is used enough, but when you do get a player who's very good at scooping or lapping or sweeping quick bowlers, if they're going to hit it there anyway, I just think bowl it short and make them play that ball when it's going at their chest or their head. And I've certainly tried to work on that theory a little bit as an analyst before. Never really, it's a hard one, because you need a player who's so good that the bowlers go, fair play. No, there's no point bowling full to this guy or wide to this guy. He's just going to get to it anyway. And that's very rarely the case. It may be the case with Sky. So it'll be really interesting to see what England do if he does get going in that way. I'm going to pick up a couple more questions, and Muku's going to play an ad, and we'll be back in a moment.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app, and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
All right, let me just see what else I've got here. Cool. All right, I've got a couple left, and then we'll head off, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Just making sure I haven't missed anything else that is interesting here. Okay. Oh, just to follow up on this. Wait 1 second. Sorry, everyone. I've lost it. Anyway, it's fine. James says, after Erasmus's first decision... Oh, God, James, I just lost your question. After Erasmus's first decision... Thank you, Muku. Is there always a concern of nervous umpires in major finals? No. I mean, umpires are going to make a lot of mistakes in a normal game as well. You probably just pay more attention to that. Umpires make mistakes all the time. When it first happened, I didn't think it was out, but I didn't think he hit it, to be honest. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Erasmus made an absolute howler when I didn't get it. It's a howler when it was slowed down and we had a better look at it. But it'd be interesting to know how many people who saw that live and thought there was a fair chance that was out, or whatever it may be. So no, I think from that perspective, I'm not particularly worried about. I'm not particularly worried about it. From that way at all. That's just a thing that happens. And everyone should be nervous. Everyone should make mistakes. Oh, sorry. I've already done that one. New Zealand scored only 52 out of 152 as boundaries, and there were lots of twos and very few dots. Is that an anomaly? No, that's what you would probably expect on a bigger Australian surface where the ball's not quite coming onto the bat. You see that in their sort of second and third big bash games played at some venues sometimes. That have big, the big venues in Australia in general obviously has more twos than probably anywhere else. I think the MCG has more threes than any other ground in the world as well. So it's quite clear for that to happen in Australia. And also, if you're taking the pace off the ball and the bowler knows you're going to take the pace off the ball, it doesn't actually become that hard to find a single. It becomes hard to muscle the ball away because you're now having to put all the pace on it, and you're also having to stay in your core position, and time the ball. So there's because if the ball's not quite coming off the way that it should, and then when it gets soft, that even happens more so. It really is hard to do that. So quite often teams will turn to twos. To be fair, I think they were trying to get boundaries. They just weren't hitting the ball very well. Nikon says, given the conditions, should India bring in Pant, better player of spin than DK, and Huda, better batter than Akshar? Well, if it's going to spin, and it's was the third time this pitch is being used, Akshar over Huda, I would have thought is the better option because he's a better bowler. And then if you're gonna take out DK because you're saying that he can't play pace, and you're going to bring Pant in, do you not want Akshar in because he can hit pace later on? And look, I mean, it'd be really interesting to see how they think about this and how they go about it. I don't think Huda is that. I don't think he'll be that impactful. I mean, he could have a really good game as a flyer. I'm very doubtful he's going to have a massive impact if he does play. I don't think Rohit really rates him as a bowler all that much. So I don't think we'll see him bowl that much. He might, I suppose, from a matchup perspective, that might be the only reason. And that might, I'm trying to think, there's a few left-handers, aren't there? Although maybe slightly less if Milan doesn't play. So yeah, the matchup thing will be quite interesting. But I'm not a huge fan of Huda. I don't mind who they play out of Pant and DK. I suppose, yeah, it depends on where they want. I kind of see those two as two different batters, where they fit into the order. So if they do just want the death hitting, then DK makes more sense. If they do want to attack the spinners, as you say, and they want to change the order up, then maybe Pant makes more sense there. Are you planning to do a video on saccades? Saccades. If the batters are predicting the length of the line, how come they do it so consistently and hit the middle of the bat? Because they've done it for years. It's what they do. It's how they do it. They are reading the bowler and everything else. And if you don't believe me, as I said, go back and read the science. You'll see. If it's a bowling machine at the same speed, they're nowhere near the right position. They have absolutely no idea where the ball is going to go. So there's a lot that goes on that we look at when it comes to that. So for those who don't know, it's impossible to follow the ball at a certain speed. I think it's anywhere over 77 miles an hour, but it's somewhere around that rate anyway. And so that's the difference between a club cricketer and an international cricketer, or an international batter, I should say. It's the ability to actually follow the ball in the air for the first 3 meters, and then basically do a saccade with your eyes when you move it down. I thought, Harry, I had done a video on this. Have I not? I'll have a look. I'll have a look if I haven't. I've got something ready to go, so maybe it was set up and I never got a chance to do it. But I'll try and explain it the best I can going ahead. But yeah, essentially, it's impossible to hit a ball, whether it be batting, in cricket, in baseball. The same thing is in table tennis and badminton, and returning a tennis serve. It's too quick. We don't have the ability to do it. So if you play tennis and you see someone throw the ball slightly wider, you realize that they're probably going to slice around it and it's going to go off in a certain angle. Those are the sorts of things they're looking at. That's what an international batter is looking at as well. Wrist position, where the bowler has bowled before, where the field is set up, and then the original release of the ball gives them a very good idea, and then they make that jump. But it is remarkable, you're right. So when the scientists first looked into this, Harry, this is good fun. When they first looked into it, they thought there was something wrong, because their original science said that no one should be able to hit the balls at this speed. I think it was baseball that did it before cricket, but Bob Woolmer did it as well. And there was a scientist in Queensland who's done it as well. Those are just the 3 that I know off the top of my head, but I think there's been more in cricket. I think England and India and maybe Sri Lanka, somewhere in Sri Lanka might have done it as well. When they first did these studies, they were like, wait a minute, we shouldn't be able to hit these balls at all. There isn't enough time for us to actually physically react. So that just tells you how remarkable this weird skill is that top international batters have. Also tells you a little bit about why tailenders struggle so much, because you can improve on the batting. How do you improve on that particular part of it is really, really interesting. And as I've said before, if you could ever work out the key to that, you could probably make a lot of money. Oh, very done, Erasmus. Frederick says, is there any research in balls being made from faux leather? Maybe by SG. I've been unable to find anything. I haven't heard anyone making them in faux leather. What I would say is this. I did probably the most extensive analysis of how much research was paid for the pink ball. And if I'm being friendly, I would say that $1.5 million was spent on the pink ball research, all included. realistically, it was probably far less than that. We don't, we've just had a huge change in our balls, and from what I could tell, very little research was done. Essentially, Kookaburra decided that from a market perspective, they were falling behind Dukes. They needed to make their ball better. They did make their ball better, to be fair to them. And in doing so, they slightly changed the game of cricket, and the ICC didn't even notice. So it does sort of tell you that sort of nothing's going on. And to be fair to Kookaburra, they're a really small company. SG's a really small company. Dukes is even smaller again, and it causes problems for cricket that ICC isn't involved in this, that the major boards aren't involved with this, that these are small companies that make the majority of their money most probably from, well, in Kookaburra's case, they probably make the majority of their money from other sports, not cricket. And they probably make the majority of their money outside of cricket balls specifically. And it's the same, and Dukes is very tiny and has a lot of market competition within the UK. SG is, not it's not like SG is Wilson or Adidas, this big global brand or anything like that. It's a real concern, cricket balls. And, I've said it a million times, no one cares. Go see my video on it. Uzair says, should India play? Oh, I've already done that question, so I won't do that again. Anyway, huge thanks to everyone for coming on. There's a bunch of new 99.94 podcasts that have dropped. I think Australia have done their big one. I think there's one for England where Rory and Dan have gone on. I think the South Africans, I haven't had a chance the last couple of days. I've been so busy with the videos we've been making. I think South Africa have done something, of which I certainly have to go on and have a look at that. And so, yeah, certainly from that perspective, there's lots of great podcasts out there. I did a video yesterday trying to explain this tournament more, or the last two World Cups together, to show how random some of these things are and how some of our perceptions coming out of the last World Cup and then also coming out of this World Cup aren't true when you look at it in a package. Just to give a better idea of that. Pakistan actually doing well probably proves my point a little bit more, as they've been one of the most consistently best T20 teams over a long period of time, and because of 3 bad games in a row, they could have lost in 2 World Cups, and they might still lose the final, but at the very least they have made the final this time. So there's a video on that, and then I'll do a normal World Cup mood board tomorrow, and then before the final, I'm sure I've got just a bunch of stuff that I can't remember off the top of my head I'll be doing. But either way, I'll see you again for the World Cup mood board after the game tomorrow. Good luck, everyone.